and some okra and some tomatoes. I was looking for cucumbers to make some more bread and butter pickles, but nobody had any. And there's a local person who has grass fed beef, but he either wasn't there yet and I couldn't wait around, or he wasn't there today, but I thought he was going to be there. So, um,
Okra. I can't figure out okra.
what can't you figure out about it? You fry
Why?
it. You fry it. You don't.
Fry
Yeah,
it. Okay.
Yeah.
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 It always seems to be mushy.
He's thinking of that slimy
No,
taste.
no,
I
no,
can't eat
no.
it like that
Oh,
either.
I can't either. No.
No.
I will put it in soup
Yeah.
or gumbo, or
Yeah, it's
something
good
like
in a
that.
gumbo. Yep, it's good in a
But
gumbo.
but no, you fry it.
Mm-hmm.
And the secret is not to overbread it. You want to be able to have
Yeah,
crispy okra,
just
not just crispy breading and slimy okra inside.
yeah, just lightly breaded.
Yeah, it's an art to cooking
Mm-hmm.
good okra.
Between the okra and the hush puppies and the fried green tomatoes, you must go through a lot of corn oil down there.
Well, I don't fry a lot of things. I got the okra because my family comes for dinner one night a week,
Hmm.
sometimes, and
You
I
hear me?
do it in the air fryer. Um,
Monday.
uh, Roll it in, do it in egg and milk a little bit, and then I like to use either panko crumbs or just a little cornmeal, and then air fry it. It's not as good as if you're doing it in oil, of course.
I'm muted. I'm muted.
We hear you.
So
What do you,
the farmers market is local, is right in your own town.
Oh yeah, it's very small. It's just local. And this time of year, there's a lot of preserves and pickles and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Well, we have one of the largest farmers market in west of the Rockies here in Portland on Saturday mornings. And I'll tell you what, there's few things I enjoy more. It's so sensuous, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feels. It's just what a wonderful experience. It's up on the campus of Portland State University, runs right down the middle of the university. And almost several hundred, almost 200 vendors are out
Oh
there on a
wow.
Saturday. It's just magnificent.
If we have 10, we're doing well.
Oh,
But still, it's nice to support local folks,
it
and
sure is.
and it beats grocery store stuff. So
Have you seen this service about ugly vegetables? That
I actually did that for a while last spring,
did you?
but my daughter-in-law and I did, and we weren't real happy. The condition was fine, but we weren't real happy with the assortment that we got. We would get things that nobody would eat, or we would get so
You
much
mean
of
like
one
okra?
thing. No, we eat okra. Uh, in fact, I don't remember ever getting any okra on that. But it was, or there would be so little of something that it wasn't enough for a family. It was,
Mm.
so we didn't do it but a couple of times. It's a great idea.
Well, I'm getting hungry, so let's get this show on the road so I can go get some brunch. I've already had breakfast, so
So,
what's next? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rare Book Cafe, the book lovers' rendezvous, where the topics are priceless and the conversation is free. Hi, I'm your host, Ed Markowitz from Montgomery Rare Books in Portland, Oregon, and joining me today is Lee Linn from Ridge Books in Calhoun, Georgia, and one of our favorite contributors, Gigi Best from the Best Richardson Diaspora Cultural Museum and Bookstore in Tampa, Florida, soon to be moving to Jacksonville. Hey,
St.
Gigi,
Augustine?
St. Augustine. Oh,
St.
finally, St.
Augustine.
Augustine. And not only
Quite the
moving,
difference.
yeah,
They're close, but
but they're not the same. The
no.
oldest city in America, St. Augustine, and not only moving, but moving soon. I guess we may see a few packers and shippers in the background there today. Is that right, Gigi?
Yes, yes, yes.
Wow,
Definitely.
St. Augustine is in for a treat.
Thank
the
you.
Rare Book Cafe is the only weekly video program on the internet, and on the internet, I mean on Facebook or on YouTube, devoted entirely to rare and collectible books and the people who love them, and those people are you. Y-O-U. Welcome to the show. We're here every Saturday from 9:30 Pacific Time, 12:30 Eastern Daylight Time, 5:30 Greenwich Mean Time, and anytime you want to listen to us, because now that we're on the internet 24/7, you can open up the page and see what we have to say, or you can follow us on Rare Book Cafe Raw as a podcast and hear what we have to say. Download us, put us in your car, and take us along with you. We're a streaming podcast, and believe me, you are going to have a lovely listen. You'll be in your car and at your destination before you know it. We're a virtual cafe accessible anywhere in the world. Well, with me today is Gigi Best in her capacity as a genealogist. Later in the show, we're going to have Richard Mori, who's on the road again, this time at the largest antique show in New York. And later in the show, Lee will be back with her segment, but she's going to be a contributor as we dawdle along in today's show. We're going to have Mary Kay Watson, David Hess, things found in old books. Send us a note at rarebookcafe@gmail.com or put a note on our Facebook page. But first, Gigi Best and the 1619 projects with a little addendum to the 1628 projects. Good morning, Gigi. What have you got to share?
Good morning. Many people have heard about the 1619 project, but as a reminder for those who are not familiar, in 1619, and this is documented by John Rolfe. He wrote in 1619 about a ship that came into Jamestown. Now, a lot of people don't know that England had given the colonies the carte blanche to attack any Portuguese or Spanish ships. And the reason why they did that is because they thought they were going to get gold or silver or very expensive loot, but they were considered privateers, which means pirates. And so in 1619, there was a ship that came into Jamestown, and they traded with the inhabitants of Jamestown, these men and women who were called the 20 and odd. And what happened is Yeardley, who was the governor at the time, Bennett, who was actually a distant cousin of mine, they came in and they put these different people on their quote unquote plantations. The thing that's significant about 1619 is that those Africans who were brought in were used as indentured servants. And there was no chattel slavery back then. So most of them were on a contract of indentureship. And one of my great grandfathers actually came in a little later. We believe he was on the ship that came in 1628. That was the largest group of Africans who were brought into Jamestown by the British. They weren't considered British then, they were English. So when they brought them in, it was about 100 boys. What people don't realize is a lot of times they were kidnapping the Africans from their countries they mostly went after the young boys and the young girls, more young boys than anything. So it's really ironic that recently I ran into a cousin. I actually met her a couple of years ago. So in my book, Thomas the Melungeon, it mentions a lot of the free people of color were indentured. So if a woman wasn't married or if she died, and it was also with the English people that they were indentured. My great grandfather, European great grandfather, indentured himself. So he was here for about 5 years. And then when you indenture yourself, you get land, you get some clothes, but it was very hard work. Um, a friend of his, Mr. Briggs, who was on the same plantation with him, said they were felling trees from well, they say from can see to can't see. That's how the Africans start. But it's actually early in the morning till, sundown. And he said they got very little to eat. They just had some corn and some water, and they worked 6 days a week. So when my ancestor, his name was John Kekatan, we believe, and the reason why I say I believe he was with the 1628 group was because his indenture was signed to do 18 years. But when he got ready to be emancipated, they added 11 more years on. So he did 29 years of indentureship. There's court records verifying all of this, and you may hear people say something about this is incorrect and this didn't really happen. But all you have to do is look at the colonial records, and you will find that John Rolfe of Pocahontas fame, he took a lot of notes and wrote a lot of things down. So here's a document that was written in 1619, court hearings that were held in 1619, all the way up to 1665, when John Kekatan's son, John Kekatan's my ninth great grandfather. So just recently, a cousin
Excuse
found
me a
me
second
through
there,
DNA.
Gigi. Can I jump in there, Gigi? I just wanted to put all of this in context, this brilliant genealogy that you've been doing. Just remind our viewers that 2 years ago, the New York Times published this project, which they called the 1619 Project.
Yes.
And it was a commentary that actually won the Pulitzer Prize, written by Nicole Hannah-Jones.
Right.
Now, as often happens in many literary projects, there is a tremendous amount of discussion, disagreement, in some cases dissatisfaction with the sourcing of the material, the intent of the material, where the basic supposition from Nicole Hannah-Jones is that the history of America is inextricably entwined with slavery. So racism has become culturally embedded in our society.
And you think of that anyway when you think of the fact that my English grandfather only had to do 5 years of indentureship, and I believe he was native slash Kekatan Indian, because his name was John Kekatan. So it was for him to do 29 years. And during that indentureship, you can't get married. You can't leave. If you run away, they will capture you, and it's not pleasant. So during that time, hold on a second. I'm gonna have to mute it.
Yeah. Now, Lee, let me get your take on this, Lee, because for the last couple of weeks we've been talking about censorship and we've been talking about cultural context. whether it was Joel Chandler Harris and Brer Rabbit, or whether it was Tom Sawyer, or whether it was Dr. Seuss. Lee, do you have any perspective on the controversy over the 1619 project?
Well, I think that one thing, I've always been so impressed with the research that Gigi does. And one thing that strikes me with both what she does and with like people, with the 1619 project, is the use of primary materials, ephemera, in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
And that, it's hard to argue with court records and census records and documents like that.
Sure.
That I think that in projects like these and in research like this, things that are primary sources become very important. And I think so much of this just has been swept under the rug. Just, we're just not going to worry about that. We're going to talk about the Puritans and the Pilgrims and people from England, and that's fine. That's going to be the history. And it's important that this history comes out, and especially how it's all intertwined, how it comes out. I read a book last year. Gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was about a Black man in Washington who was a chef who started doing research on his family, and he started doing workshops about cooking on the plantations and about the influence of the African culture on the culinary history of the United States,
mm-hmm.
Which was very, very interesting. There were a lot of cookbooks that were published by like the women of the plantation, but their source for the recipes was usually the African slaves on the plantation. Not from the European tradition so much, particularly in the South, but
sure.
from the African tradition. And that was an interesting too. He did a lot of genealogical research as well on his family, and one thing that I think has come out, like with Gigi's family, that there is, if you go into the genealogy of, and we've talked about this before, of someone with African background, you're going to find English, Danish, German all over the map. Probably more so than if you look at the genealogy of me, for example.
Sure.
So I think that, but our history our history should all be available to everyone. Not just
one of the biggest controversies about the 1619 project is teaching it in history class. There are many feel as though that it's not appropriate for some reason, whether it's the accuracy, but as you and Gigi both pointed out, there are historical documents to emphasize those points. Perhaps maybe it's just something better taught in social sciences class.
Well, it
should certainly belong to the curriculum.
It certainly belongs in the curriculum, regardless of where it's taught. And it, I don't know, ideally, of course, there wouldn't be a need for it to be a separate curriculum. It would all be part of the history.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's pretty much got to be a separate, emphasis has got to be stronger and not just, mixed into Jamestown or whatever, but it's got to be a stronger emphasis on it.
Right. For those of you just tuning into the show, you've probably heard a little bit of tape ripping in the background, perhaps the flaps on a couple of boxes being closed. Gigi, Best of the Best Richardson Diaspora Cultural Museum and Bookstores in the process from moving from Tampa, St. Petersburg area, east across the state all the way to St. Augustine. And today is moving day. So she's got a little bit of action going on back there, but I think she's joined us again.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right, Gigi. You got to get that on the road. No big deal. We're carrying the conversation here with you, not for you.
Because we're moving, we also had some artwork and a refrigerator and some small furniture that we're donating to a homeless, where they help homeless veterans set up their homes. So they just arrived too at the same time. But one thing I wanted to say about what Lee said, which is so important, is that people try to negate things that they don't know about. But like you say, it's amazing the court records that still exist in Virginia. And all you have to do is go to not only the Virginia library, where I was able to find the originals of the court records of my 9th great grandmother. And also another thing that they have is a good place to go is the William and Mary College University. If you go there, they have excellent records. So there are places that you can go and really find these original documents. And the handwriting is very difficult to read because it's written like they wrote language in 1619. And, 1607, way back to the original colonization of Jamestown.
Now, one of the most controversial points in the 1619 project is that the Revolutionary War was fought for the preservation of slavery. Or at least that's the interpretation of Nicole Hannah-Jones, which is one of the biggest points of contention in the theory, the critical race theory, which grew out of the 1619 project. How do you feel about that, Gigi? Certainly you can look for court records and find the facts, but how do you know the motivations of the people behind the facts?
It's ironic. There were people who did not want enslaved people to be free. I don't know if you heard about the new thing that's coming out in Texas, where they found out, well, I was told years ago that part of the annexation of Texas had to do with the fact that the people of Mexican descent lived there first. But one of the things that people don't realize is the first man who died in the revolution, Crispus Attucks, was African and Native American. And so I do believe, I think they went back and tried to change that so they didn't say that everyone, that was everyone's purpose. But some people, it was. And in fact, I know people who were enslaved. I mean, not personally, but I know stories of people who were enslaved who were offered the opportunity to go to the war, Revolutionary War, for their quote unquote masters. And they were promised that they would get their freedom when they got back. Some of them, it never happened. So when you realize in 1776, they had this people who were enslaved, and the majority of them didn't get freed until almost 100 years later. So I'm blessed because I have European, British ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War, but I also have free people of color who went on their own. They didn't go to say, if you give me my freedom. They were already free. So, and they descend from Jack Kekatan, the man that I told you about, who was given his indentureship was released in 1665. So it's more than one story, and you have to know it all or try.
Yeah. Gigi, tell us a little bit about your process. I think doing genealogy is a whole lot more intense than just signing up for Ancestry.com. You were talking about going to the courthouse in Virginia. Tell us how thorough and where are your sources for doing your genealogical research?
Well, and I tell people all that time. I tell people that all the time. I just had a gentleman here. I teach genealogy classes here. And I just had this gentleman who, because of his last name and because of the plantation, he believed his parents were on, or ancestors, he automatically believed that he was a descendant of this gentleman. Some enslaved people took the ancestor's name. I mean, the slave enslaver's name. Some of them didn't. A lot of them took their own names. So for him to make this presumption, and there are cases like that. There are cases like in my husband's family. There's cases in my family. The difference is my third great grandfather wrote a will to my second great grandfather. So he was able to prove it. And that's why I've been able to prove my ancestry on my European line all the way back to 1569. So what people have to realize, if you're doing this work and you're doing it seriously, I'm not saying ancestry is not good, because it's introduced me to many cousins when you look at the DNA. And then we work together and say, okay, well, this is where my great grandfather was. This is where your great grandfather was. And the interesting thing is, you can't always look at surnames. I was able to tell her that my great grandfather, who fought in the War of 1812, free man of color, and he was Indian, and he put on his pension record Indian, and they put false. So everything you read is necessarily not accurate, but I know he was part of the Lumbee tribe. So I know the actual history, and there's a lot of records, on them too. But his brother, he was indentured at 4 years old because his mother was single. His brother was indentured at 4 months, and his sister was indentured at 5 years old. They were indentured first by the popes. And so but the mother was a Lucas. And so because there wasn't a marriage, my Lucas Locus clan comes down from her. But her brother was named Pope because his brother was named Pope because he stayed with the Pope family longer and ended up with that name. But he was a free man of color. But DNA is so important, and it tells you about our connections. And she and I are still looking up records and matching each other up.
Well, another side benefit, I suppose, from all this genealogical work is there's really tons of great stories that are lost to the past. But doing this genealogical work, especially if you're an author or a short story writer, it's a lot of fodder. There's a lot of meat and potatoes there for a story. I mean, look at something like Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series. How she was able to go back and trace family lineage for several hundred years and produced a couple handfuls of wonderful books. And lineage genealogy was the foundation of that series,
right?
As well as a little bit of mysticism.
And that's why I'm an author. And that's why I wrote my book, Thomas the Melungeon. A lot of people didn't know what a Melungeon was. And so you find out that they're free people of color. And because they were Native, they were African, and they were European all together. Came out of Virginia very early.
Very good, Gigi.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us. I guess it may be a few weeks before we see you again. You've got a lot on your plate for the next couple
right.
of weeks.
Right. I don't think I'll make it next week. I'll be trying to unload. We'll be unloading, trying to position. Because when you move, both of y'all, both of you own bookstores or book dealers. And so what it's like once you get them alphabetized. And then when you get to the new location, you have to re-alphabetize. I'm hoping I can find some energetic college students because I'll be right there next to a next to a college. Yes.
How much work do you have to do on your new space, or is it ready to move into?
We said we were going to go there and paint it first, but I don't even know if we're going to do that. We might just accept it like it is when you think about the work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll give it a
but
certain sense of having been there a long
yes,
time.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing. We're not pressed to paint on the outside. We might want to paint on the inside because we don't like the colors so much, But when you put your bookshelves and things like that in there, you might not even notice it that much. But um, it's just wonderful because we hear that during Christmas that there's all these lights and people come there, and it's so funny. This week we've met people who got married there, who came into the store and said, we're going to come see you, or people who had their honeymoons there, and people who come for that Christmas light show. So there's so much history. 1565, the oldest city in America.
Well, I have
It's
some
just
good friends
awesome.
in St. Augustine who moved there this past year from Calhoun, and so I'm going to need to plan a visit to see them so I can come see you too.
Yes, definitely. And we're blessed because we're on St. George Street. You have to be able to find us, 30 St. George, because that street is a walking pedestrian
Yeah.
street. And they say 63 million people visit there a year.
Wow.
Wow. All right. Well, you make sure you call back in and give us a tour of your new facility when you're all settled in.
We'll do that. We'll do that. I'm going to miss y'all. But
All right.
I'm going to miss you, but we'll get back together soon.
All right. We're going to miss you too. Good luck out there.
Okay. Thank you
Don't
so
be picking
much.
up too many boxes. Let the movers do that.
Oh, I will. Take care.
Bye bye, Gigi.
Bye bye.
All right, Lee. Now it's time for one of our favorite segments, Things Found in Books. David Hess of the Bookman Bookstore in Orange, California has some intriguing items to share with us today. Well, he's got some intriguing items to share with us every week. This is one of the most popular um, shows on our station. And I'm looking here because, here it is. Sorry about that, folks. I picked up a book this weekend. Couldn't find it anywhere online. Your Complete Life. Just a little tome. Opened up the inside cover, and there is a postcard from the author. I'm going to send this on to David and see what he has to say. But let's see what he's got to say this week. Ladies and gentlemen, David Hess, Things Found in Books. Take it away, David.
Hello, this is David Hess from the Bookman in Orange, coming to you today for our weekly segment of Things Found in Old Books. So let's get started. Today, a customer brought me this. He saw it on our shelf. He was going to buy it or look at it. He didn't buy it. Anyway, he brought this up to the front counter because he was familiar with our show, and he had seen a number of episodes, and he thought that I should get this. What he found was a little butterfly. It's a real butterfly, and it's in a little plastic casing, and somehow it missed the pricers, and it made the shelf, and he found it, and I wanted to thank him. I wanted to tell him that I would go ahead and put that on the show. So, a butterfly. Now, I found just the other day this book here. It's called The Trail of 98, a Northland Romance by Robert W. Service. Pretty famous poet, but this is not his poetry. This is an actual novel. And in this novel, I found this little slip of paper. And again, we talked about leaves before. Inside the slip of paper is, looks like a maple leaf. So we got the maple leaf. Now, the book has no date on it, but someone had penciled in there 1909. Now, I don't know how accurate that is. But if that's of any indicator, the paper itself is not dated as well. what it is, it says a Battery D 1920, Battery D 122nd Field Artillery. It's a memorandum, annual tour of duty. The following uniforms and equipment are prescribed for enlisted men. And it has a whole list of, for enlisted men, you got the shirt, then you got the campaign hat, the chin strap, and that's for on their person. And then over here is enlisted men stuff that should be in their backpack, towel, trousers, coat, denim, and then the stuff that should be in their locker, the foot locker, blankets, white shirts, swimming suit, athletic suit, and there's some handwritten notes and other things that were meant to be in the stuff. And so it says, for further information regarding the above, consult your chief of section. So again, I'm not sure what this is. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not sure how old it is or what war. I have a feeling it's for World War I era soldier. And it was folded up, holding a leaf in this book. But also in the same book, turn to the back here, are these two coupons from Walgreens, 1932. And what it is it says this coupon is worth 5 cents towards the purchase of 1 quart of carry-out ice cream. Rich, smooth, creamy, delicious. So you got 5 cents towards a carry-out ice cream. But on the back is it's actually not a coupon, but an entry to win a free Chevrolet. They were giving a free standard Chevrolet coach will be given free every day except Sunday until further notice to one of our customers who come into Walgreens, if their name is posted in Walgreens. And so you can win yourself a Chevrolet. So you hang on to these tickets. It says, do not discard, because you'll need this ticket to win the Chevrolet. So this person had 2 tickets and didn't want to lose them. So he put it in this book. And I don't think he won. But it's a great item here. It's good only until July 10th, 1932. 5 cents off. At least you get 5 cents off. Maybe not the Chevrolet. And then I found in this old ex-library book, Zane Grey, The Call of the Canyon by Zane Grey, the old library book that's seen its better days. It's pretty well worn and tattered. But in the flap of this jacket here was this envelope, and I found it, and I opened the book, and I was very excited. I thought, oh, good, a letter. You know, I love getting old letters. But alas, there was no letter in it. It's just the envelope. But I thought the envelope was interesting enough because it's dated 1952, and it's coming from the sender. It was Flagstaff, Arizona, and it's going to Cloverdale, California. And it's got the little Western motif of the cowboys on the corner here, and the little 3-cent stamp up here, 3 cents. And it was mailed in January 9th, 1952. But I thought it just, with the book, the old Zane Grey thing and the Western motif, and back in 52, Flagstaff was probably a very small town, a little small desert town. So it had that going for it, coming from a small desert town, going to Cloverdale. And I looked up Cloverdale because I live in California. This is Cloverdale, California. I've never heard of Cloverdale. It's way up above San Francisco. And even today, there's only like 8,000 residents. So in 1952, I can't imagine it would be much bigger than that. So it's going from one little small town in Flagstaff to another little small town in California with a mystery letter that was inside that will never be known what it was. I did like this a lot. I liked it. And finally, from my archives, I found this a while ago, and I've stored it away ever since because it's just too good to lose. It's an advertisement from about 1865 is the date on it. And what it is, it's an advertisement for Johnston's Fluid Beef. Bovril. It's a liquid beef, just in case you want to round out your meal without chewing. I don't know. Maybe it's like a beef broth. I don't know. They have like all kinds of page, a couple pages of small print literature, what it does. And on the back, it's even smaller and more verbose. And I read through it, but I kind of lost interest. I just like the idea that it was liquid beef, and but you can get Johnston's Bovril lozenges. You want that beef flavor to linger, you can chew on one of those. And you have beef iron and quinine wine to go with your dinner, I guess. And beef flour soup, and so these, it says it is served hot at the leading hotels and refreshment buffets. So I guess in 1860 something, this is actually from England as well. So it's not just, I had a feeling that maybe they had some excess beef laying around to decide what we're going to do with all this extra beef. So let's just write up a pamphlet and sell it as liquid beef. Who knows? It might have. I don't know if it ever caught on, but yeah, I thought that was kind of amusing and caught my fancy. But there you go. And that's all I have for today. And if you have anything you'd like to share, and I'd be more than happy to share it here on the show, write me at oldbook@ebookman.com. Not old books, just oldbook@ebookman.com. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week for another episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that was another interesting segment by David Hess. And if you found something in your book, send him a picture, send him an email, or you can send it to this show, rarebookcafe@gmail.com, or leave us a note on our Facebook page of what it was that you found in the front cover of your book. Hope it was a 4-leaf clover to make this a lucky week for you. All right. Is Lee still there?
I'm here.
Hi, Lee. We've got Richard Mori coming up soon. And this week, Richard was in Bouckville, New York. I'm not sure if it's Bouckville or Buckville, New York, for the Madison Bouckville Antique Week. It's billed as the largest antiques and collectible show in the state of New York. Do you go to many of those fairs down there in Georgia, Lee?
We don't have a lot of them. A part of it is there are a lot of flea markets that are open on weekends, but most big antique shows are not outdoor ones because in the summer down here you don't want to be outdoors at an antique show.
I don't imagine you do.
You don't want to, and so we don't have a lot of that kind of thing. There are antique markets that are only open like one weekend a month and things like that.
Sure. But
there seem to be less of the traditional antique malls lately. I know one here closed not too long ago than there used to be. At one time, I mean, we had booths in 3 antique malls at one time, but keeping them current and they were 2 of them were out of town. It didn't do enough business to make it worthwhile.
Well, and antique stores aren't always the best places to find lots of books, but when you just find one, it's usually a treasure.
One, when you can find one, that's okay.
I think in general, antique dealers may not know what they have in the book world. They're more concerned about the 3D objects, I think.
Right, and sometimes it's very helpful.
All right, Lee, and the rest of our listeners out there, it's time for one of our newest and most fun segments, Richard Mori, the Road Warrior. We have heard from Richard in the past month or so as he hops, skips, and jumps across the New England states. We've heard from him in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, and now he's gone across the Hudson River to New York. He's attending the Madison Bouckville Antique Week. This show is billed as the largest antiques and collectible show in the state of New York. Richard, what do we need to know to set up this video? What have you got to share with us today?
Well, hi, Ed. It's really good to see. You know, I have had a really fun experience. Once a year, Madison Bouckville, New York, has an antique show. Of course, last year we didn't have it. This year, we didn't know what to expect in terms of who was going to be there. But I sent you some video, and I think you're going to see what really turned out to be a fun time. We were deluged with the word rain all week, but managed on Friday and Saturday to get a little sun. But we had a great time. Here's a chance for you to see a little bit behind the scenes at the big event in Madison Bouckville.
So here we are at the Madison Bouckville Antique Show. Since the first show, of course, since August of 2020, they didn't have one. So this is a reconstituted event. I'm in tent B at Cider House. We're here for the week. I just wanted to give you a little preview of what we're doing here. This is my booth. You can see this is all the children's books. And over here we have the fiction and non-fiction books. Let's see, get this straight. And we're just and then you get to see the other end of the tent. Well, we've had a rainy day here. And we're going to have rain probably every day this week. But here we are in Madison Bouckville, New York, and we're here every August. So here's what we found yesterday on the field. I did a little shopping before we started doing setup. I wanted to especially show you this one here. This is the Boy Scouts on the Trail by Thornton Burgess. Most of you are probably familiar with Burgess because he wrote what is called the Mother West Wind books, which I happen to have right here. But most people aren't familiar with his Boy Scout titles. And the Lost Trail is in the dust jacket. I was really pleased to have found that. That's about a $250 book. And I also found another children's book worth about $200 also yesterday.
Well, you may remember a couple of weeks ago at Rare Books Cafe, we were talking about my puzzle that went missing. Well, I did find it. It was right where it was supposed to be, in a safe place. And here it is now, all matted up. Are you familiar with this? I'll give you a few seconds to look at it and think about it. Now, what's really special with this is that it also has the envelope. The envelope is probably a little more elusive than the puzzle itself. But we are looking at an Esselube advertising piece done by Dr. Seuss in about 1944 or 43. This is one of the rarest of all the Seuss pieces, and I actually own another envelope that I've had for about 10 years that I've been waiting to find a puzzle for us, and I still have another envelope that I'll probably wait another 10 years to find a puzzle for. But this is really one of my favorite pieces, and certainly one of the best of all the Dr. Seuss pieces to be found.
I just wanted to give you a sense of the outside. This is the Cider House field, and we're between B and C tents. You can see how long these tents are. There's almost, I think, about 230 or 240 dealers just on this one field. And as you can see, we're getting rainy skies.
Well, Ed, what did you think? Was it pretty exciting? I know I was pleased. with the week's results. I met a new bookseller there that you're probably going to get a chance to hear about later. And I didn't get a chance to interview him, but he's a really great guy. And I've already signed up for next year, so I'll be back there, and I hope we'll be able to share that again next year.
All right, Richard, that's super. You've always got the greatest attitude of any bookseller I know. But you haven't come to us yet from Connecticut or New Hampshire, so let's get that truck in gear and travel across the rest of the New England states, telling us about the treasures you find in the back room or out on the front table. Thanks again, Richard. Mary Kay Watson of, what's the name of your Unbridled Shakespeare?
It is Tangled Shakespeare.
Tangled Shakespeare.
Yes.
Of Tangled Shakespeare of Morgantown, West Virginia. Mary Kay is our expert on illustrations and an amazing illustrator herself. Perhaps if she's got a moment or two, she'll tell us about it, the next publication that she has coming out. But we want to make sure you get full credit for all this research you've been doing, Mary Kay. So why don't you share some of it with us?
Okay. Yeah, I did do a lot of research this week. And actually, I just want to add something to your talk with Gigi. I'm sure that Alan remembers who this was, but in Morgantown, West Virginia, years ago when I was in college, we had a bookstore and it was called Wolf's Head Books. And I used to go there all the time. He did book searches for me. I've bought many books from him. Then he moved to St. Augustine. And the only time I ever saw him after that was at the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. So just wanted to put that in there. And I think that he passed away a few years back. And so I miss Wolf's Head Books at the, I miss them in Morgantown, and I miss them at the book fair too.
Well,
anyway.
Book dealers don't pass away, Mary Kay. They just move on to the next chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, the St. Augustine store was great.
Yeah, I never got there.
I think his wife managed to keep it going for a few more years, but he had a huge inventory and lots of neat stuff. We would go by there some years on the way to the Florida Fair or coming back from it or something. It was a fun place to visit.
Well, he was a great guy.
He was.
I really enjoyed having him. You know, we're a university town, West Virginia Mountaineers, and West Virginia University. And so he did a real good business here. But, you know, I think as they got older, they wanted to move south to Florida. And that's where they ended up, was St. Augustine. Anyway, yes, I did do some research on Arthur Burdett Frost. He was known as A.B. Frost. He was a self-taught artist. He got his first job working in a lithography factory. So that gave him a lot of chances to hone his sketching skills. Little play on word there. The first book that he ever illustrated was Max Adler's book, Out of the Hurly-Burly. This is the first book that A.B. Frost illustrated. And there's some illustrations that I included in the pictures. He did have some formal training with, that's the cover page right there. So you see his style of sketching. Now you might see a little bit of the artist who worked for Lewis Carroll. And actually A.B. Frost did one of Lewis Carroll's books. So I think he did a couple of his books. He also had some formal training with Thomas Akins, Gilbert Tucker Margeson, who was a marine painter, and William Merritt Chase. He did get formal training from them. But he was inspired by the English photographer Edward Muybridge. Muybridge was coming out with a kind of a stop motion photography where he would take pictures of horses in motion, things moving. And this inspired and led Frost to do kind of a comic strip type illustration. He did 3 books himself. They were titled Stuff and Nonsense, The Bull Calf and Other Tales, and Carlo. And a little side note, when I was talking about the Columbian Exhibition World Fair in Chicago, his work was actually exhibited there. So he was a prolific book illustrator, worked for Harper and Brothers, and did a lot of books. So,
and had some great mentors. He was trained under Remington, and I also think that he got some painting skills under Thomas Eakins.
Yes, yeah, I mentioned Thomas Eakins. Yes, and it wasn't. He really didn't have a lot of formal training. He had talent to begin with, so I think that he probably just kind of sidled up with these other artists and just learned at their side, some of his styles. Yeah, he was a good artist. Yeah, so this is from the Hurly Burly, and the next one is a fella leaning against a wall with I think probably a sack of grain. You see a lot of tagging or hatching here and kind of scratchy sketches, but Frost could do contour drawing too, which is just you draw just one line. He was very very talented. He could draw in almost any manner. I've also included one of the sketches from, I believe this is from Brer Rabbit, and yeah, it's just really a cute sketch. His imagination was just wonderful.
Mary Kay, I think I had read somewhere that for 8 or 9 years, he and his wife went to France to study under the Impressionists. Did he do much in color, or was it still mostly just a black and white illustrator?
I don't really know. I do know that he did go to Europe. It's amazing. A lot of the artists did go to Europe back then, turn of the century. It was kind of the thing to do, and they studied in Paris. I've not seen any of his colored work. Morristown Library. If you Google Morristown Library, you'll see a lot of his work. They have a lot of his work online. The last picture that I sent Alan is one, and I'm not real sure where this is from. I found it in the public domain, but this is actually my favorite one. And the reason I like this drawing so well is because it illustrates one of the things that he did. He didn't draw. You can see look at the horses. You can see the contour line around the horses and a little bit of the hatching to show some of the molding of the bodies. But then he leaves a lot of white space. That really helped the painting to pop, or helped the drawing to pop out. And if you look at this, it's just, this is just from his imagination. And this is also that stop motion photography influence you see. They're all in the midst of moving. And I love the pigs, the lazy little pigs laying back there in the haystacks, just laughing and watching it. And it's my favorite drawing, I think, that I, when I was doing the research that I found.
Well, I love bacon. Does that count?
Yeah, we all love bacon. He's just a prolific artist. You'll find his works in a lot of different places, and you'll see influence from other artists in his works. And yeah, so I would
thank you for sharing that. I know you made a special effort to go off and research A.B. Frost as we began to talk about some of the work of Joe Chandler Harris a couple weeks ago, and you came through again, Mary Kay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one thing that I had found was that he was colorblind, and so working in black and white and grayscale, I was more what he did.
Isn't that interesting? And I didn't put that down in my notes, but yes, he was colorblind. Yeah. I find that interesting too. We have found several artists while I've been doing the Rare Book Cafe that were colorblind, and it's just very interesting. Yeah, it doesn't affect your values whenever, but so yes, black and white, that would be the thing.
I have a quote from a letter that Joel Chandler Harris wrote to Frost, in which he said, the book was mine, but now you have made it yours, both sap and pith. So Harris had a great deal of admiration for Frost and for his contributions to the Uncle Remus stories. And I think what a lot of us who grew up reading Uncle Remus stories, what we really remember are those illustrations. We would recognize Brer Rabbit or the Tar Baby anywhere from those illustrations.
Well, he had a way of anthropomorphizing the animals. He made animals look like they were people, or he gave them the characteristics of people. And just what an imagination.
Well, may we all grow to become more colorblind in our lives.
There you go.
Mary Kay, I understand that you also came across some interesting things about the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, when you were researching this project.
I did, but I am going to talk about that next week, or in 2 weeks when I'm back on. Yeah.
All right, you're going to leave us hanging here, huh?
Yes. Yeah. Check out Morristown Library to see some more.
Is that Morristown, New Jersey?
I would assume.
Okay.
Yeah, I
think
it's up in New England somewhere. That's where a lot of these artists started out up there, like a whole coven of them back then. But check out Morristown Library to see some more of the drawings of A.B. Frost.
All right, Mary Kay, thank you very much. Before you go, what are you reading these days, or what are you drawing these days? Better yet.
Well, I'm working on Hamlet. So I'm at the final act. I'm working on the first scene. I'm stumped because I'm doing the gravedigger scene, and it's my favorite scene, but it's comedy, and you have to be really careful whenever you it's a play on words. The gravediggers, that's why they're funny. It's because they're using play on words. And so I'm trying to put Shakespeare in my books into a language that's easy to understand. And I don't want to mess up what Shakespeare did, because actually that scene, you can get the comedy. You don't need to have it put in a different language to understand that scene. So I'm still mulling around in my head, how I'm going to write that.
Well, we're looking forward to see what you come up with. Something a little slick, something a little cynical, something with a little bit of wry humor in it.
Thanks.
All right, Mary Kay. Let's bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right, let's bring Lee back in here for a one-on-one. Lee, I understand that you have been doing a little bit of research on a couple of Atlanta heroes, a couple of icons of civil rights, politics, and human rights from Atlanta, Georgia, both Julian Bond and John Lewis, luminaries in the civil rights movements of the 1960s. And most recently, John Lewis became an author himself post-mortem. Right. And what have you got for us?
Okay, well, last week at the Ephemera Fair, I purchased a letter that was from the Southern Poverty Law Center when Julian Bond was president. It was a fundraising effort on the part of Joanne Little, who was arrested for killing a guard in the Beaufort County, North Carolina jail in 1974, and then escaped. She later turned herself in. Her defense was that the guard had sexually assaulted her, and the defense was supported by what they described as the peculiar way the guard was dressed, with his shoes outside the cell and his pants down. One hand was holding his pants up, and the other the ice pick that, and I don't know where she got the ice pick, but the ice pick that she used to stab him with. This became a nationally known case with assistance from various groups, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. And so I bought this 3-page letter, which and came with a newspaper clipping, which I don't think I'd sent a picture of. It resulted in a $3 donation from someone named Paul, who did not include an address with his money order. So they could not write and thank him, but he did make a contribution to that. And so that got me to thinking about what did I have about Julian Bond. And Julian Bond, of course, was a major figure both in Georgia and national civil rights and government. He served in both houses of the Georgia legislature for 20 years. And he helped, when he was in college, helped found the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And then in 71, he was one of the founders of the Southern Poverty Law Center. He was elected to the Georgia House of Representatives in 74. They refused to seat him because of his opposition to the Vietnam War and his support of the opposition to it from various civil rights groups. He wrote a comic book about the Vietnam War. It's not, he doesn't sign it, and actually he's referred to it in the third person. But this is his work, and it is a history of the war and opposition to it, especially by blacks, including Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, the SCLC, and such major figures as Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis. The book has been reprinted online by the 60s Project, but this is, as far as I know, one of the original copies. I compared it with a copy owned by a major collector in Atlanta, and we did decide based on various points that this was one of the originals. So here we go back to 1974 with graphic novels, something we've been talking about, at various times on this show.
We have.
And that Mary Kay actually talked about with A.B. Frost, because he did illustrations that were forerunners to comic strips. So we fast forward to John Lewis, who is, of course, mentioned in the Vietnam comic book, which I have in stock. And we've talked lately about the impact of comics and graphic novels on a younger generation and on a way of getting younger people to read. And this is, material that's not just, like we used to read the Archie comics or Batman or whatever. Lewis had previously published a 3-volume set called March. And in promoting those, and he did it, his co-author is Andrew Aydin, or Aydin, Aydin, Turkish-American writer, and someone who served on Lewis's staff and various other political campaigns. He is extremely well regarded, has won a lot of awards for his work. Still a young man, still in his 30s, but he and Lewis collaborated on the 3 volumes of March. They would go to school libraries to promote the book. They went to Comic Con, and Lewis, a big part of Comic Con is costuming, the cosplay.
Oh yeah.
Lewis went as himself. He went as John Lewis, maybe a younger John Lewis, but he did participate in all this, and by all reports really enjoyed what he was doing. So they had started on the next series, which is called Run, and the blurb is Run recounts the lost history of what too often follows dramatic change. The dramatic change being the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the pushback of those who refuse it, and the resistance of those who believe change has not gone far enough. And so that's what this first volume of Run is about. I just got my copy on Saturday, and I'm not sure if they had planned additional volumes and whether Aydin will go ahead and do this. This is illustrated by Nate Powell and Elle Fury, and it is a dramatic, very dramatic book to look at. And I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to read it. But here we are at the impact of the graphic novel as a way of raising interest in and very important subjects, and not just as a source of entertainment. So this was they worked on the script, and Lewis worked on it. I think there were some reports that he was still working on it the week before he passed away. And as we all know, he died in July of 2020 of pancreatic cancer. But it's a great contribution to both to civil rights history and to the future of civil rights, and also to the future of the graphic novel
and to literature.
And
are those illustrations in color, Lee?
No, they are. Well, let me see. No, they are all black and white.
All black.
Let me. Can't see it very well, but they are.
Which is often something that distinguishes a graphic novel from a comic book.
Right. That's true. The cover is in color. The cover illustration is in color, but the inside. It is a nice hardcover book. Dust jacket. Serious publishing here.
I don't know myself, but I would love to hear from some educators or administrators out there who listen to the show about whether or not graphic novels are required reading in any courses, any history courses, any social sciences courses these days. We say anecdotally that the graphic novel is a vehicle to bring younger readers to the world of literature. But I wonder if that's actually the case, if it's being used in academic and institutional curriculums across the country. Any idea?
I don't know. I don't know. I know that my granddaughter loves them, but I don't know. And I know that some that she has purchased lately were purchased at school book fairs.
Okay.
They have scholastic book fairs a couple of times a year, and the grandparents send $20 bills so they can buy books.
Well, if you're a teacher or an educator out there, drop us an email at rarebookcafe@gmail.com and let us know in practicality, what is the role of the graphic novel in today's school curriculum? Love to hear more about that.
Oh, and one thing about Run, the blurb on the cover was written by Stacey Abrams.
Oh, no kidding.
So we have another Georgia icon coming along there.
Yes, you do. Wow, she's made quite a name for herself, and she has worked hard to do that. That is not something that came to her by chance.
We are very proud of her around here.
Correct.
So that's my report on Run and
Lee, you've been carrying the show this week. Do you also have a book club report for us as well?
Of course I do.
Look at those broad shoulders.
Yes. Well, the Calhoun Fourth Sunday Book Club met last night. Well, Sunday night, the 22nd.
All right, hold on a second, Lee. Little drum roll here. Let's let everybody know what you were reading.
Oh,
boom!
We read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen.
Uh-oh.
Okay. And
how'd that go?
Well, this was only our second meeting since February of 2020. And we met at Jane and Ed's beautiful old house in downtown Calhoun. It was built in 1909. And we had a lot of good food. Jane and Ed were actually married in this house. Her grandparents built it. Her mother grew up there. She grew up there. She and Ed retired to the house. It's been very little change since 1909. They've done one addition. And a sleeping porch was added in 1918, Jane said. It's a lovely old house. And this is the dining room. And this is the part. All the food had not arrived at this point. But you notice the prominent bottles of wine.
Excuse me, Lee, did you say the sleeping porch?
Yes, a sleeping porch.
What's a sleeping porch? I don't know.
A sleeping porch is where you sleep in hot weather.
Okay.
Back when there was in 1918, there was no air conditioning, and a screened porch was a place where you could sleep in hot weather. you might have had fans by then, but yeah, that's very common in Southern homes. Actually, I grew up going to a river cabin that we rented, and we had a sleeping porch, and we had cots on the sleeping porch, and we would sleep out there.
Curious.
So,
Well, something.
okay.
I learn something
anyway,
new on this show every week.
yeah, every day. So anyway, this was some of last night's of Sunday night's spread. Okay, we came to the conclusion that you either love Jane Austen or you don't. And I think I tend to fall into the latter camp. I managed to get through it, all nearly 400 pages.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that it picked up toward the end. Jane Austen's developed her characters by dialogue, not by any description. And it's very satirical on the manners and customs of the day. The book was published in 1813, but it's actually based in the 1790s. And there's a great deal of emphasis on money. And this is not necessarily aristocracy, but landed gentry to a large extent, and some aristocracy as well. The Bennets have 5 unmarried daughters, ages like 14 or 15 to mid-20s. And because there are no sons, Mr. Bennet's estate is entailed, which means that it can only pass to a male heir. And the closest male heir is this awful clergyman named Collins that will inherit. And Mrs. Bennet stays in a stew about marrying the girls off so that one of them can take care of her if Mr. Bennet were to die.
How convenient.
Yes, it was. And we had a lot of discussion about the economic factors that were in play here, which are accurate. Their estates were entailed. And we did some research on what it meant if Mrs. Bennet says he has an income of £5,000 a year, what that actually meant, which meant that he had probably about £100,000 that invested at 4 or 5%. And anyway, she finally manages to marry off several of the girls. There is a good bit of character development in the major characters, though Mrs. Bennet stays the same throughout the book. We get really tired of Mrs. Bennet. We knew all we needed to know about her in about the first 5 pages. Some of us did. Some of the group, we were 10 of us there. Some of them didn't finish the book, but I did finish the book. I got all the way through it. And
you're a trooper.
I was. I actually watched the Keira Knightley movie of the book, which I chose instead of some of the 10-part TV versions because it was short and it condensed the story so well that you still got the satire and all of that and the changes in the major characters in the book, but it didn't go on and on and on forever. So I'm sorry, Jane, but that's just how I feel about it. I don't know. We did talk about, of course, we always talk about COVID and vaccines, and we talked about the title of Pride and Prejudice and how that title can be applied to so many people today who are so proud to be going, asserting their independence by refusing to take the vaccine or to wear masks or whatever, and prejudice against all of these safety features, all the safety measures that we should be taking. So we talked about that some. We're in a bad place here right now. Cases are up. Our hospital is over capacity. People are not vaccinated, and it's scary. However, as of today, our schools have gone back to wearing masks all day, which is wonderful, much, much needed. But there was a big football game Friday night, with stands with nobody with masks on.
Yeah.
So,
Lee, I hear you talking about your book club, and it's much more about books, isn't it? I mean, you've got community, you've got great food, you've got relationships, and you have current social policy discussions?
We do. We are a very close group. We have a lot of former educators. We have we have two sisters. We have people who've known each other for 50 years or more. It's a supportive group. We're getting older.
You're getting older. I'm not getting older.
I'm the third youngest in the group, and the ages go up to 87, and the 87-year-old was there last night, as was the 86-year-old. But it's a very active group, and we have to, if we want to do something besides at our usual time, we have to check everybody's calendar, this kind of thing. And
so you usually have it around 4 in the afternoon, right after dinner?
We have it at 5 in the afternoon, and this can count as supper if we want it to.
Okay, very good.
And everybody takes home leftovers. We also socialize at other times. 8 of us had dinner together privately last Friday night too, and we had a Low Country shrimp boil. But it's a great group of people, and it's a group that there have been health problems, there have been various falls and other accidents, there's been surgery.
Plenty of shoulders to lean on.
We feed each other. We take care of each other. It's a lot more than just a book club.
Great. Well, listeners out there, if you're a member of a book club, send us an email at rarebookcafe@gmail.com. Let us know what you're reading. Let us know the relevance to current social situations. Let us know what you served your guests for dinner tonight, and we'd love to hear more about your book club. And if you got a recommendation for Lee and her book club, send that in as well.
We have scheduled through December. Whether or not we'll be meeting all of those times depends on how the virus goes here. We're reading a book, Robert E. Lee and Me by Cy Degely for next month. We're reading Nomad Land in October. We're not meeting in November because it falls right on Thanksgiving, but we're having our Christmas meeting early in December, like maybe the second week of December, and we're reading Mignon Ballard's book, No Word for Goodbye, for December, and that will be a Christmas party. And we're going to try to work out a way to do a video of some of that evening to share on Rare Book Cafe.
Excellent. You're going to have Mignon at the Christmas party?
Oh yeah,
of course.
Oh yeah. Mignon will be there. She was there last night. She was late because she thought it was Saturday instead of Sunday. We have a problem with days of the week. Retired people have a problem with days of the week.
Yes, we do. Yes,
we do.
Well, thank you again, Lee, for all of your hard work and research, but somehow I feel like it's not work for you.
Well, no, it's not. I've enjoyed this enormously. For the past how long have we been doing this now? Since January, sometime.
Great, and we're going to do it again next week, Lee. Next week we're going to have Eddie Nix on the show. He's the proprietor of Driftless Books and Music in Viroqua, Wisconsin. Always fascinating. What are you going to have for us next week, Lee?
Well, one thing. I've asked the book club to send in. We have a list of the books we've read, which is about nearly 140 at the moment. And our secretary has sent the list out to all the members, and I've asked them to send me in lists of some of their favorites. And so we'll talk some about things that we've liked. Maybe some of the things we don't like, but mostly things that we've really liked and what we've done there, because we won't meet again until the end of September.
Super. All right, folks, that's about it for the show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests, of course, my co-host Lee Linn of Ridge Books in Calhoun, Georgia, Gigi Best, who's packing up and moving to St. Augustine, Florida, Richard Mori. I can't really say where he's from because he's from a little bit of everywhere. Hard to pin that guy down. Our weekly appearance by David Hess, and so much more. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place, same bat channel. Have a good week, Lee.
You too.
Ciao.